Okay, so I got a 2012 RT van here. This one's actually virgin. It's never been cracked open before. So the complaint was that it's running a bit sluggish. It's got almost 100,000 miles on it. So I've been waiting for one of these to come in so I can make a video on this. But so we got oil on the air filter. And if we look at the intake tube, it's full of oil. So this doesn't happen very often. But usually what happens is the PCV valve gets jammed or stopped working, and that's the PCV valve right down there. And look, this, two little bolts, and it comes off. It's got a seal. There's a mechanism in there. So usually what happens is these get plugged up. People use shit gas. The engines get coked up a little bit, and they stop circulating. So what we're doing here on this one is we got a p0520 oil pressure switch. We're also putting a p0128 new thermostat in it. Thermostat, oil pressure switch, and PCV valve. Here's the oil cooler seal kit. I don't have the Plenum seal kit here yet, and we're putting some Denso plugs in it. So these are, I mean, you look at this and it's pretty intimidating. These are a Mercedes engine, but they're actually really simple. So thermostat sits right there. Boop. Two little bolts, that sucker comes off. PCV valve sits right over there. Two bolts, that sucker comes off. Now this coolant hose is about 9 miles long here. And you can just unhook it and just kind of flop it over. So I didn't record pulling the intake. That's easy. You guys can figure that out on your own. But I'm going to pull off this fueling system section here and get to the oil cooler and then continue. Camera magic. So got the injector housing loose. Now so here's something else. Now see these O-rings here? See how that's sucked in? This is a very common oversight for misfires on these. See how that one's sucked into? So they suck in air essentially, because this is just plastic. Okay, we're back. Surface visor crisis. So anywho, these O-rings get sucked in and they create leaks. Also, I don't unhook the fuel line when I do this. I just kind of plug up the holes, blow it with air, and then flip it over. Also, another thing that is good to do is you're gonna have to drain the coolant out of this thing because coolant runs through the oil cooler. Also, crack the lid loose and let it drain so that when you crack the oil cooler loose, it doesn't go everywhere. Another thing we're doing here is we're replacing the oil pressure switch down there, which we'll do when we get it off and sitting on the bench. Okay, so I figured I'd record this here. Now there's the oil pressure switch down there with my socket on it. Now in the old flat rate dealer days, when these would come in under warranty, you just get fucked on warranty. And as a tech, it's not worth it sometimes. That's why I actually left the dealerships, because I got tired of working for free. So it is possible to actually get this oil pressure sender in and out without pulling the intake. It's just kind of a bitch because there's that coolant hose there. But here's the socket. This is a special socket just for this. Now you can use other sockets. I don't know what size it is. You have to figure that out on your own, but this is what it looks like. It just screws in and unscrews. Okay, so oil cooler's loose. It takes 5 8mm inverted Torx. And I just flip it up and let it chill there. Now it's going to leak oil no matter what. So usually what happens here is this whole intake valley either fills up with coolant or oil. So in this case, you can see this corrosion down in here. It's because this particular one was leaking coolant. So when these first started leaking, when I was still at the dealership, they would fill up this entire intake valley and they would leak out the back. And Chrysler's ingenious solution was to clean it up and then run the vehicle and see if it leaks again, which paid like 3/10. And it's like, okay, what am I gonna do with this 3/4 of a gallon of fucking oil in here? And originally we were replacing the entire cooler until Chrysler figured out that it was just the compound and the O-rings. But you know, they've been building cars for 100 years and still can't figure that shit out. So here you can see we got coolant and oil. Coolant, oil. These two are oil, and there's also another oil over here. So another point of interest here is the NOx sensors. The NOx sensor there. There's one under that rag. So a lot of times what'll happen is this intake will get filled up with oil or coolant. It'll get inside this connector and it'll corrode it out. This one's still clean. It still has weather packing in place, which is good, but usually they get fucked, and sometimes it'll actually short out and cause you intermittent NOx sensor problems. So in order to get those NOx sensors, you have to perform this same procedure. Now, all we have to do from now is just kind of clean this up a little bit and replace the O-ring kit and put it back together, torque it down. So if this was full of oil, you'd have to use something like a Mighty Vac or some sort of an extractor to suck all this out. It doesn't have to be perfect. Most of it will evaporate over time, but that's how you do it. So I'm going to go ahead and get these O-rings replaced, and then we'll come back. So here's the kit. There's a couple different sizes. You can't get these mixed up. They only go where they go. There's an O-ring. It goes here. The big one goes down there. And the two medium-sized ones and the little one go there. So that's it. All you got to do is stick these in there and stick that cooler back down.